A struggling mother fails to pay the bill, so she left a note. Next day she gets a call she would never forget. The January wind sliced through Emma's thin coat as she clutched her 6-month-old daughter Lily against her chest. The baby's cries had softened to whimpers, but Emma knew it wouldn't be long before hunger drove her to wail again. Her own stomach twisted with emptiness, a feeling she'd grown accustomed to over the past weeks. "Just a little longer, sweetheart," Emma whispered, her breath visible in the cold evening air. "We'll figure something out." She patted her pocket where her wallet sat, painfully light. Inside was exactly $23.42, all that remained after paying for Lily's medication. The landlord's eviction notice, tucked in her other pocket, seemed to burn through the fabric. 3 days. That's all the time she had left before they would be on the street. Emma adjusted Lily in her arms and continued walking, each step heavier than the last. 6 months ago, her life had been different. She'd had a stable job as an administrative assistant, a modest apartment, and dreams of providing a good life for her daughter. Then the company downsized, her position eliminated with a cold efficiency that still stung. Her savings had evaporated with alarming speed, and job applications disappeared into the void without response. The scent of warm food drifted from a restaurant up ahead, Salvatore's. It was small and unassuming, with golden light spilling from its windows onto the darkening street. Emma paused, drawn by the tantalizing aroma and the promise of warmth. Her stomach growled loudly, and Lily stirred against her chest. She shouldn't. The $23 needed to stretch until something changed. But Lily hadn't stopped crying earlier, and Emma hadn't eaten anything substantial in 3 days. Her milk supply was diminishing. They both needed nourishment. "Just this once," she murmured, pushing open the door. Warmth enveloped her immediately, along with the rich scents of garlic, tomato, and freshly baked bread. The restaurant was half full, the gentle murmur of conversation creating a soothing backdrop. Emma chose a table in the corner, partially hidden from view, and settled Lily on her lap. A waiter approached, a man in his early 30s with kind eyes and an easy smile. His name tag read Marco. "Good evening," he said, his voice carrying a slight Italian accent. "Welcome to Salvatore's," Emma smiled weakly. "Thank you. Something to drink to start?" "Just water, please." Marco's eyes flickered to Lily, who had quieted in the warmth of the restaurant. "And for the little one?" "She's fine, thank you." After Marco left, Emma studied the menu, careful to find the least expensive option, a simple pasta dish for $12.99. It would leave her with just over $10, but the portion would be substantial enough that she could save half for tomorrow. When Marco returned with water and a basket of bread, Emma ordered the pasta. As he walked away, she broke off a small piece of bread and chewed it slowly, savoring the simple pleasure of food. Lily watched with wide eyes, and Emma felt a stab of guilt. Soon her daughter would be old enough for solid food, another expense she wasn't sure how to manage. The pasta arrived steaming hot, the portion generous. Emma ate deliberately, making sure to leave half untouched for later. With each bite, she felt strength returning to her limbs. For a moment in the warm cocoon of the restaurant, she could pretend everything was going to be all right. But reality intruded when Marco brought the check. Emma reached for her wallet, a knot forming in her throat. She opened it, expecting to see the folded bills she'd counted so carefully earlier. Instead, she found it empty. Her heart stopped. She checked again, fingers desperately searching every compartment. Nothing. The money was gone. Had she been robbed? Had the bills fallen out somewhere? Her mind raced through possibilities as panic rose in her chest. She remembered stopping at the pharmacy for Lily's medicine. Had she forgotten to put the change back, or had she miscalculated what would be left? Marco was approaching again. Emma felt her face burning with shame. The other diners suddenly seemed to be watching, though rationally she knew they weren't. She couldn't bear the thought of causing a scene, of being humiliated or worse, reported to the police. With trembling hands, she reached for a napkin and borrowed a pen from the neighboring table. She wrote quickly, "I'm so sorry. I thought I had enough money, but I was mistaken. I promise to return and pay as soon as I can. Please forgive me." She signed it simply, Emma, tucked it under her water glass, and slipped out, clutching Lily to her chest. The cold hit her like a physical blow after the warmth of the restaurant. Tears burned her eyes, but she blinked them back. She couldn't afford to break down. Not now. Not when Lily depended on her. As she hurried away, Emma didn't notice Marco returning to find her table empty. She didn't see him pick up the napkin, read her words, or watch after her with concern in his eyes. She didn't know that her simple note would set in motion events that would change her life forever. The one-bedroom apartment Emma called home was little more than a glorified closet, but tonight it felt particularly oppressive. The radiator clanked and sputtered, providing minimal heat against the January chill. Water stains marked the ceiling. In the corner, legacy of a leak the landlord had promised to fix months ago. Emma placed Lily in her second-hand crib and covered her with a blanket. The baby was finally sleeping, exhausted from crying. Emma had tried to nurse her, but there wasn't enough milk, and the formula was down to the last scoop. She would have to water it down tomorrow, a thought that filled her with fresh shame. Sitting on the edge of her mattress, Emma emptied the contents of her purse onto the threadbare carpet. Keys, phone, lipstick, baby wipes, pacifier, all the mundane items of her life scattered before her. No wallet. Had she left it at the restaurant in her panic? No. She remembered holding it, opening it. The money must have fallen out earlier, or perhaps she'd been pickpocketed on the crowded bus. She dropped her head into her hands. How had her life unraveled so completely? Just over a year ago, she'd been engaged to Lily's father, planning a modest wedding and dreaming of their future together. Then she'd gotten pregnant, and Cameron had shown his true colors. He wasn't ready for a family, he'd said. He needed his freedom. The engagement ended with a cruel efficiency that still stung when she allowed herself to remember it. Emma had believed she could manage on her own. She had a decent job, supportive co-workers, and determination. But then the company had been acquired, departments consolidated, and her position eliminated. The severance package had seemed generous, until she realized how quickly money disappeared when you were supporting a newborn. Her phone buzzed with a text message. It was from her mother in Arizona. "Thinking of you and Lily. Call when you can. Love you." Emma's thumb hovered over the screen. She could call her mother, confess how desperate things had become. But what good would it do? Her mother lived on a fixed income in a senior community. She had nothing to spare, and Emma couldn't bear the thought of causing her more worry. Instead, she texted back, "We're doing great. Lily's growing so fast. Love you too." The lie tasted bitter, but it was kinder than the truth. Emma tried to formulate a plan. She had 2 job interviews lined up for the following week, one at a call center, another at a retail store. Neither offered the salary or benefits of her previous position, but either would be better than nothing. If she could just make it, through the next few days, find a way to pay the rent, things might improve. She lay down on the mattress, too tired to undress, and closed her eyes. Sleep came in fitful bursts, interrupted by worries about the morning, about Lily's dwindling formula, about the restaurant bill she'd left unpaid. When morning came, Emma awoke to Lily's hungry cries. She prepared the last of the formula, diluting it slightly, and fed her daughter while trying not to think about what she would do when it was gone. Her phone rang. An unknown number. Emma hesitated, then answered, expecting another collection agency. "Hello?" Her voice was hoarse from lack of sleep. "Is this Emma?" A man's voice, vaguely familiar. "Yes, who's calling?" "This is Daniel Salvatore. I own the restaurant where you dined last night." Emma's heart plummeted. She stood quickly, jostling Lily, who began to fuss. "I'm so sorry about what happened," she began, her words tumbling out. "I don't know what happened to my money, but I promise I'll pay you back. I just need a little time." "Emma," Daniel interrupted gently, "I'm not calling about the money." She paused, confused. "You're not?" "No. I'm calling because I'd like you to come back to the restaurant today. Around 4, if possible." Emma's confusion deepened. "I don't understand." "I'd like to talk to you," Daniel said. "Nothing to be concerned about, I promise. Can you come?" Emma hesitated. What choice did she have? If she refused, he might indeed report her to the police. "Yes, I'll be there." "Good," Daniel said, and she thought she detected a smile in his voice. "I'll see you at 4. After he hung up, Emma sat down slowly, trying to process what had just happened. How had he found her number? Then she remembered filling out the customer feedback card when she'd first arrived, hoping to win the monthly drawing for a free meal. Dread and curiosity warred within her as she prepared for the day. She dressed Lily in her warmest clothes and packed her diaper bag. There was nothing to do but wait for 4 o'clock and whatever awaited her at Salvatore's. At precisely 3:45, Emma stood outside the restaurant, hesitating. The closed sign hung on the door, but lights were on inside. Had she misunderstood, or was this some kind of trap? As she debated whether to knock or leave, the door opened and Marco, the waiter from the previous night, beckoned her inside. "Emma, right? Come in, Daniel's expecting you." Clutching Lily to her chest, Emma stepped inside. The restaurant was empty of customers, the tables set with fresh linens as if in preparation for the dinner service. "This way." Marco led her toward the back of the restaurant. Emma's fear returned. What was happening? Why was the restaurant closed? Her steps slowed. "It's okay," Marco assured her, noticing her hesitation. "Daniel just wanted to speak with you privately." They approached, a table set for 2, with a high chair placed alongside. A man rose as they approached, tall with salt and pepper hair and warm brown eyes that crinkled at the corners when he smiled. "Emma," he said, extending his hand, "I'm Daniel Salvatore. Thank you for coming." Daniel Salvatore had the kind of face that inspired immediate trust, open, expressive, with laugh lines etched around his eyes. As he pulled out a chair for Emma, she noticed his hands, strong and weathered, with calluses that spoke of hard work. "Please, sit," he said, gesturing to the table. It was set with fine china and crystal glasses, as if for honored guests rather than a woman who had fled without paying her bill. Emma perched on the edge of the chair, Lily still in her arms, too nervous to relax. "Mr. Salvatore." "Daniel." "Please." "Daniel, I want to apologize again for last night. I honestly thought I had the money. I wasn't trying to—" He raised a hand, stopping her. "I know. Your note told me everything I needed to know about your character." Marco appeared with a basket of bread and 2 bowls of minestrone soup. The aroma made Emma's empty stomach clench painfully. He set a small bowl of cooled soup beside her place. "For the little one," he explained with a gentle smile. "It's mostly broth, very mild." "Thank you," Emma murmured, bewildered by this unexpected kindness. Daniel broke a piece of bread and dipped it in his soup. "Please eat. We can talk while we do." Still confused but unable to resist the food, Emma adjusted Lily on her lap and began to eat. The soup was rich and flavorful, warming her from the inside out. "I grew up poor," Daniel said after a moment, his accent becoming more pronounced as he spoke. "In a small village outside Naples. My mother worked 3 jobs to feed 5 children after my father died. There were days when we had nothing." He took a sip of water, his eyes distant with memory. "When I was 10, she sent me to buy bread. With the last of our money. On the way home I was so hungry that I ate half the loaf. When I realized what I'd done, I was terrified. We needed that bread to last 3 days." Emma found herself leaning forward, caught in his story. "I went to the baker and told him what happened. Instead of scolding me, he gave me a full loaf and a job sweeping his floors after school." Daniel smiled. "That baker changed my life. He taught me his trade, helped me save money to come to America. Everything I have, I owe to his kindness." Marco returned, removing their soup bowls and replacing them with plates of fragrant pasta. Emma had barely taken a bite when Lily began to fuss. Without a word, Marco stepped forward. "May I?" he asked, holding out his arms. Normally, Emma would never hand her baby to a stranger, but something about Marco's gentle demeanor reassured her. She nodded, and he expertly lifted Lily, cradling her against his shoulder and patting her back as he walked around the restaurant, showing her the paintings on the walls. "My nephew has 3 kids," he explained with a shrug when he caught Emma's surprised look. With Lily content in Marco's arms, Emma focused on her meal and Daniel's words. "When I read your note last night, I saw myself," Daniel continued. "Someone trying their best in difficult circumstances. Someone with pride and integrity." He set down his fork. "Emma, I don't know your story, and you don't have to tell me. But I'd like to help, if you'll let me." Emma swallowed hard, her throat tight with unshed tears. "Why would you help a complete stranger?" "Because once I was that stranger, and someone helped me." He leaned forward. "I need a new assistant manager. Marco has been handling it along with his serving duties, but the restaurant is growing, and we need someone dedicated to the position. It pays $18 an hour with flexible hours and meals included." Emma's fork clattered against her plate. "You're offering me a job. I'm offering you an opportunity. The rest is up to you. But you don't know anything about me. I could be terrible with people or numbers or—" "I know enough," Daniel said firmly. "I know you're responsible enough to leave a note when you couldn't pay. I know you care deeply. For your daughter. And I know that sometimes good people find themselves in difficult situations through no fault of their own." He smiled. "Besides, I've been in this business 40 years. I'm a good judge of character. What do you say?" Emma stared at him, hardly daring to believe what she was hearing. A job, a decent wage, the chance to pull herself out of this downward spiral. It seemed too good to be true. Yes, she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "Yes, I would be grateful for the opportunity." "Good. You can start tomorrow. 9 to 5, Tuesday through Saturday. Marco will train you on the systems." Daniel rose, signaling the end of the meal. "Now there's one more thing." He disappeared into the back and returned with a paper bag. "Some food for tonight. And this," he handed her an envelope, "is an advance on your first week's pay. Enough to cover your rent, I think." Emma opened the envelope with trembling fingers. Inside was $500 in cash. Tears spilled down her cheeks before she could stop them. "I don't know how to thank you," she managed to say. Daniel smiled. "You can thank me by showing up tomorrow ready to work, and someday when you're in a position to help someone else, you'll do the same." When Emma left Salvatore's that evening, Lily sleeping peacefully in her arms and the weight of groceries and cash in her bag, she felt something she hadn't experienced in months: hope. The first week at Salvatore's passed in a blur of new routines and adjustments. Emma arranged for her elderly neighbor, Mrs. Chen, to watch Lily during her shifts in exchange for groceries and help with Mrs. Chen's own errands. It wasn't an ideal childcare situation, but it worked for now, and Lily seemed content with the grandmotherly attention. The restaurant itself was a revelation. Under Daniel's ownership, Salvatore's operated like a well-oiled machine, yet maintained the warm, familial atmosphere of a neighborhood establishment. The staff, Marco, 2 other servers named Gabriela and Tomas, and the kitchen team led by Chef Antoine, welcomed Emma with an acceptance that made her throat tight with emotion. No one asked about her circumstances or the note that had led to her employment. Daniel had simply introduced her as the new assistant manager, and that was that. She was part of the Salvatore's family now. Emma's days quickly fell into a satisfying rhythm. Mornings were spent with Lily, afternoons and evenings at the restaurant. Daniel showed her the reservation system, the supply ordering procedures, the staff scheduling, all the intricate details that kept Salvatore's running smoothly. She absorbed it all, determined to prove his faith in her wasn't misplaced. On her 5th day, as she reviewed the week's receipts in the small office behind the kitchen, Daniel appeared in the doorway. "How are you settling in?" he asked, leaning against the frame. "Well, I think," Emma replied, gesturing to the organized stacks of paperwork, "I've updated the inventory spreadsheet and found a few places where we might be able to save on costs." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "Already making improvements." "I hope that's okay," she said quickly. "I noticed we were ordering napkins from 2 different suppliers, and one is significantly cheaper for the same quality." A smile spread across Daniel's face. "That's exactly why I hired you, Emma. Fresh eyes see things differently." He pulled up a chair beside her. Tell me what else you've observed. For the next hour, they discussed her ideas, streamlining the ordering process, updating the reservation system to an online platform, creating special promotions for slower weeknights. Daniel listened intently, nodding occasionally, asking questions that pushed her thinking further. "You have a natural talent for this business," he said finally, sitting back. "Where did you work before?" Emma's hands stilled on the keyboard. She hadn't spoken about her previous life to anyone at Salvatore's. "I was an administrative assistant at Meridian Publishing before the acquisition and downsizing." Daniel nodded thoughtfully. "Corporate experience. That explains your organizational skills." He paused. "And Lily's father?" The question was gentle, without judgment, but Emma still felt her defenses rise. "Not in the picture," she said shortly. "I see." Daniel rose. "Bring Lily to work tomorrow. I want to meet this young lady who has such a resilient mother. But my shift, we'll make it work. This is a family restaurant in every sense of the word," he smiled. "Besides, everyone is eager to meet her. Gabriella has been knitting a hat." After he left, Emma sat in stunned silence. In her previous job, pregnancy had been treated as an inconvenience, motherhood as a liability. Here it seemed her daughter was viewed as a natural extension of herself, welcome in the workplace. The next day, she brought Lily to Salvatore's. With trepidation, half expecting chaos. Instead, she found that the staff had converted a corner of the office into a makeshift nursery, complete with a portable crib donated by Marco's sister and a mobile of colorful paper birds crafted by Tomas. Throughout the day, Lily was passed from one doting staff member to another during their breaks. Chef Antoine sang French lullabies while preparing the evening's sauces. Daniel rocked her while reviewing the week's financials. Even the stern dishwasher Rahim melted at Lily's toothless smile. By closing time, Emma was fighting tears. Not of stress or sorrow, but of overwhelming gratitude. She had stumbled into not just a job, but a community, people who saw her as more than just her circumstances, who valued her as a person and embraced her child. As she prepared to leave, Daniel handed her a small package wrapped in brown paper. "A little something for Lily," he said. "Open it at home." Later that night, after Lily was asleep, Emma carefully unwrapped the package. Inside was a silver bracelet sized for a baby's wrist with a single charm, a tiny table set with plates. A note accompanied it. "For Lily, who brought her mother to my table and changed both our lives. May she always find a place set for her wherever she goes." Daniel Emma traced the delicate charm with her fingertip, memories of her own childhood surfacing. Her mother had always set an extra place at their table, even when times were lean. "You never know who might need a seat," she'd say. It was a tradition of welcome, of abundance, even in scarcity. Now Daniel was extending that same tradition to Lily, to both of them. For the first time in months, Emma allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, things would be all right. Spring arrived with a burst of activity at Salvatore's. Daniel decided to expand the outdoor seating area, taking advantage of the restaurant's corner location to create a charming patio adorned with twinkling lights and potted herbs. The project became a labor of love for the entire staff, with everyone contributing ideas and effort beyond their regular duties. Emma found herself at the center of the expansion plans, coordinating with vendors, managing the budget, and even helping to paint the new fence on her day off. Lily, now crawling and babbling, became the unofficial mascot of the renovation, supervised by whoever had a free moment. The new patio opened in early May with a special celebration for regular customers and neighbors. Emma moved through the crowd with growing confidence, greeting guests, ensuring the service ran smoothly and handling minor crises with calm efficiency. 3 months at Salvatore's had transformed her from a desperate single mother to a capable restaurant manager who commanded respect from staff and customers alike. As the evening wound down, Daniel found her arranging fresh flowers on the hostess stand. "You've made quite an impression on the Henderson party," he said, nodding toward a table of well-dressed diners. "Mrs. Henderson just told me our service has never been better." Emma smiled, pleased by the praise. "Gabriella deserves the credit. She handled their complicated order beautifully. And who trained Gabriella on the new system? Daniel raised an eyebrow. Who reorganized the server stations to improve efficiency? Who created the table rotation that ensures no server gets overwhelmed? Emma felt her cheeks warm. Taking credit didn't come naturally to her, a habit from her corporate days, where her contributions were often overlooked or attributed to others. The restaurant is thriving, Emma, Daniel continued, and much of that is because of you. It's time we discussed your future here. He gestured toward his office, and Emma followed, curious and slightly apprehensive. Inside, Daniel closed the door and sat behind his desk, suddenly formal in a way he rarely was with her. I want to promote you to full manager, he said without preamble. Higher salary, benefits, and profit sharing. Emma blinked. Profit sharing? Yes, I believe those who contribute to a business's success should share in its rewards. He slid a document across the desk. These are the details of my offer. Emma scanned the paper, her heart racing as she saw the figures. The salary was double what she currently earned, and the benefits package included health insurance for both her and Lily. The profit-sharing arrangement would provide quarterly bonuses based on the restaurant's performance. This is incredibly generous, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. It's what you've earned, Daniel corrected. I took a chance on you, yes, but you've more than proven your worth. Emma read through the document again, hardly daring to believe her good fortune. This kind of financial security had seemed impossible just a few months ago. There is one condition, Daniel added, his expression serious. I want you to enroll in business courses at the community college. The restaurant will cover the tuition. Emma looked up, surprised. Business courses? You have natural talent, but formal education will take you further. He leaned forward. Someday you might want your own restaurant, or to take Salvatore's in new directions after I retire. For that, you need knowledge as well as experience. The implication of his words, that he saw her not just as an employee, but as a potential successor, left Emma speechless. No one had ever invested in her future like this. I don't know what to say, she admitted. Daniel smiled. Say yes, to all of it. Yes, Emma replied without hesitation. Yes, to everything. Later that evening, after the restaurant closed and the staff had gone home, Emma lingered in the empty dining room. The space had transformed in her eyes from a place where she had once felt shame and desperation to a sanctuary of possibility. She took out her phone and, for the first time in months, called her mother with genuine good news to share. Mom, it's Emma. I have something wonderful to tell you. As spring turned to summer, Emma settled into her new role with determination and vision. The business courses proved challenging but exhilarating, opening her mind to possibilities she hadn't considered. She began to see Salvatore's not just as a workplace, but as a canvas for her growing ambitions. Each day brought new challenges and satisfactions. Regular customers now asked for her by name. Suppliers negotiated with her directly. The staff looked to her for leadership, especially when Daniel was absent, which happened more frequently as he began to step back from day-to-day operations. But amid the professional triumphs, Emma faced personal challenges. Lily began walking, then running, her curiosity and energy demanding more attention than the makeshift office nursery could accommodate. The arrangement that had worked well for an infant wasn't suitable for a toddler with strong opinions and louder lungs. After a particularly difficult evening when Lily's tantrum disrupted service, Emma sat in Daniel's office, exhausted and discouraged. I don't know if I can do this anymore, she admitted. Balancing everything, being a mother and a manager. Maybe I'm trying to have it all when that's not possible. Daniel listened, his expression thoughtful. My mother used to say that balance isn't about equal time, but equal heart. You give your whole heart to Lily when you're with her, and your whole heart to this restaurant when you're working. That's all anyone can ask. But it doesn't feel like enough, Emma sighed. Lily needs more structured care, more space to explore, more interaction with other children. Then we'll find a solution, Daniel said simply. Because I'm not losing. The best manager I've ever had. And Lily isn't losing her mother's presence in her life. The solution, when it came, was typically Daniel in its generosity and practicality. The unused apartment above the restaurant, originally intended as Daniel's residence before he bought a house in the suburbs, would be converted into a proper daycare space for Lily and potentially other staff children. Daniel's sister-in-law, a retired preschool teacher, was willing to supervise the children during restaurant hours. "It's not conventional," Daniel acknowledged, "but neither is our restaurant family." By midsummer, the apartment had been transformed into a bright, cheerful space filled with toys, books, and child-sized furniture. Lily thrived in her new environment, especially when Marco's niece and Gabriella's son joined her several days a week. Through the monitor Emma kept in her office, she could hear her daughter's laughter as she worked, a constant reminder of why she pushed herself so hard. With the childcare situation resolved, Emma threw herself into new initiatives for the restaurant. She revamped the menu with Chef Antoine, adding seasonal specials that highlighted local produce. She implemented a weekend brunch service that quickly became popular with neighborhood families. She created a loyalty program that rewarded regular customers with special perks and personalized attention. Each success built her confidence further, erasing the lingering doubts from her previous professional disappointments. At Salvatore's, her ideas weren't just heard. They were valued, implemented, celebrated. Yet beneath the satisfaction lurked a persistent worry. Her happiness, her security, her daughter's well-being all rested on Daniel's continued goodwill. What if he changed his mind? What if he sold the restaurant? What if his generosity had limits she hadn't yet discovered? These fears kept her working harder, proving herself indispensable, even as she told herself she should trust in the foundation they'd built together. August brought a heatwave that drove customers to Salvatore's air-conditioned interior and evening patio. Business boomed, with the restaurant fully booked most nights and the new brunch service creating a steady weekend revenue stream. Emma hired 2 additional servers to handle the increased traffic, carefully training them in Salvatore's distinctive blend of professional service and personal warmth. One sweltering Tuesday, as Emma reviewed applications for a busboy position, an unexpected visitor arrived. Marco appeared in her office doorway, his expression unusually serious. "There's someone here to see you," he said. "A man. He says he's Lily's father." Emma's heart seemed to stop, then restart at double speed. "Cameron, here?" Marco nodded. "Should I send him away?" Emma's first instinct was to say yes, to protect the life she'd built from the man who had abandoned them. But curiosity and a strange sense of inevitability made her shake her head. "No, I'll speak with him. In Daniel's office, please. And can you check on Lily?" "Already done. She's napping with the other children. Rosa is watching them." Emma took a deep breath, smoothed her hair, and walked to Daniel's more formal office. She was grateful he was out for the day, meeting with suppliers. This confrontation didn't need an audience. Cameron Peters stood by the window, his back to the door. He was as handsome as she remembered, tall, with the athletic build of a man, who prioritized gym time, his dark hair expertly cut. When he turned at her entrance, his blue eyes widened slightly. "Emma, you look different." She knew what he meant. The desperate, exhausted woman he'd last seen had been replaced by someone confident, well-dressed, nourished. She didn't acknowledge the observation. "What are you doing here, Cameron?" He gestured to the chair across from Daniel's desk. "Can we sit, please?" Against her better judgment, Emma sat, maintaining a composed expression, though her pulse raced. Cameron took the seat opposite her. "I've been trying to find you," he began. "Your phone number changed, and when I went to your old apartment, they said you'd moved with no forwarding address. Why were you looking for me?" Emma kept her voice neutral, though anger bubbled just beneath the surface. "You made your position very clear when I told you I was pregnant." Cameron had the grace to look uncomfortable. "I know, I was wrong, I was scared and selfish." "Yes, you were." Emma didn't soften her response with understanding or forgiveness. She had worked too hard for her current peace to surrender it easily. "I've changed, Emma." Cameron leaned forward. "I've grown up. I want to make things right. I want to meet my daughter, be part of her life. After 15 months of absence, After contributing nothing to her care, her medical expenses, her well-being, Emma's voice remained calm, but her words were pointed. "Why now, Cameron?" He hesitated, and Emma saw a flicker of something, calculation perhaps, behind his eyes. "My parents found out about her," he admitted finally. "They're devastated that I kept their grandchild from them. They want to meet her, to help." And there it was, the real reason. Not genuine remorse or desire for connection, but family pressure. Emma wasn't surprised, but disappointment still stung. "So, this isn't about Lily at all. It's about appeasing your parents." "No, it's not just that. So I've been doing a lot of thinking." The office door opened, and Marco appeared with Lily in his arms. The toddler was fussy from her interrupted nap, her face scrunched in displeasure. "Sorry to interrupt," Marco said, not sounding sorry yet. "Oh no, sir, someone woke up asking for Mama." Emma rose immediately and took Lily, who settled against her shoulder with a contented sigh. The child's wispy blonde hair and delicate features were so clearly her own that no one would suspect Cameron's contribution to her existence. Cameron stood slowly, his eyes fixed on Lily. "Is that—" "Yes," Emma said. "This is Lily, your daughter." Something shifted in Cameron's expression, surprise, wonder, perhaps a touch of genuine emotion. He took a step forward. "Can I—" "No," Emma said firmly. "Not today. Not like this. If you want to be part of her life, we need to establish some ground rules, legal ones." Marco, who had remained by the door, nodded approvingly. "What kind of rules?" Cameron asked, his brow furrowing. "Child support, for starters, 15 months, worth retroactive to her birth, a formal custody agreement, and a paternity test since you were so quick to question whether she was yours when I first told you about the pregnancy." Cameron's face tightened. "You don't need to be so defensive. I'm trying to do the right thing here." "The right thing would have been supporting your child from the beginning," Emma replied, gently bouncing Lily, who was starting to fuss again. "Not showing up when it's convenient or when your parents pressure you." "Things weren't that simple," Cameron protested, running a hand through his perfectly styled hair. "I was just starting at the firm working 80-hour weeks. I wasn't ready." "And you think I was ready?" Emma's voice rose slightly before she caught herself. "I wasn't ready either, Cameron. But Lily didn't care about our career plans or emotional readiness. She needed parents who would put her first, no matter what." Marco cleared his throat. "Emma, Chef Antoine needs to discuss tonight's specials when you're free." His message was clear, an escape route if she needed it. "I'll be there shortly," she replied gratefully. Turning back to Cameron, she added, "If you're serious about being in Lily's life, contact a lawyer. We'll work out a legal arrangement for visitation and support, otherwise don't come back here." Cameron's jaw clenched. "Is that how it's going to be? Legal and formal?" "That's how it has to be," Emma said firmly. "Lily deserves stability and commitment, not a father who appears and disappears based on his whims or his parents' expectations." After a moment, Cameron nodded stiffly. "I'll have my lawyer contact you." He reached into his pocket and produced a business card. "My number in case you need to reach me." Emma accepted the card with her free hand, then watched as Cameron took one last look at Lily before leaving. When the door closed behind him, she exhaled shakily. "You okay?" Marco asked. "I will be," Emma replied, pressing a kiss to Lily's head. "We both will be." That evening, after closing, Emma found herself sitting at the bar with Daniel. She'd recounted Cameron's visit, surprised by the intensity of her own emotions as she spoke. Anger, certainly, but also a lingering sadness for what might have been had Cameron been a different kind of man. Daniel listened without interruption, his weathered hands cradling a glass of amaretto. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "You handled it well," he said finally, "setting boundaries, protecting Lily." "I don't know if I did the right thing," Emma admitted. "Should I have been more accommodating?" "For Lily's sake." Daniel shook his head. "You did exactly right. A father who truly wants to be in his child's life will respect those boundaries. He'll prove himself through consistent actions, not just words or one impulsive visit." Emma traced the condensation on her water glass. What if he does step up? What if his parents push him to fight for custody? Then you'll face that challenge as you faced every other, with courage and intelligence. Daniel's voice was firm. And you won't face it alone. You have people in your corner now, Emma. Remember that. She looked around the empty restaurant, the space that had become her sanctuary, the workplace that had become her home. Daniel was right. She wasn't alone anymore. For the first time since Cameron's appearance, Emma felt her tension ease. Whatever came next, she would handle it. She had, too, for Lily and for herself. Autumn painted the trees outside Salvatore's in vivid golds and crimsons, and with the changing season came unexpected developments. Cameron, true to his word, had his lawyer contact Emma. The terms he proposed were surprisingly reasonable, modest. Child support payments, gradually increasing visitation rights, and a paternity test to be conducted immediately. Emma, with Daniel's encouragement, hired her own lawyer, an old friend of his who specialized in family law, and charged her a reduced rate. The negotiations were civil, even cordial, as both parties seemed focused on Lily's best interests rather than past grievances. The paternity test confirmed what Emma had never doubted. Cameron was Lily's biological father. With that established, they formalized their arrangement, and Cameron began weekly supervised visits at a neutral location. To Emma's surprise, these visits went well. Cameron appeared genuinely interested in getting to know his daughter, bringing age-appropriate toys and taking countless photos to share with his parents. Lily, after initial shyness, warmed to the attentive stranger who shared her blue eyes. Emma observed these interactions with guarded optimism. Perhaps Cameron had indeed matured. Perhaps this arrangement would give Lily something valuable, a father's presence in her life, even if it was part-time. At Salvatore's, business continued to thrive. Emma's management initiatives had increased revenue by 30% over the previous year. Daniel, increasingly confident in her abilities, began taking longer absences, traveling to Italy to reconnect with family and explore new culinary inspirations. "The restaurant runs better when I'm not here to interfere," he joked before his most recent departure. "You've made yourself indispensable, Emma." Those words echoed in her mind one crisp October morning as she arrived to find an unfamiliar, luxury car parked outside the restaurant. Inside, Daniel sat at a table with an elegantly dressed couple in their 60s. "Ah, Emma," he called, rising to greet her. "Come meet my friends, Richard and Elaine Mercer." Emma shook hands with the couple, noting their appraising glances and polished manners. Mr. Mercer's grip was firm, businesslike. "Daniel has told us so much about you," Mrs. Mercer said warmly. "The miracle manager who transformed Salvatore's." Emma smiled modestly. "Daniel exaggerates. The restaurant was already wonderful when I arrived." "Not at all," Daniel insisted. "Emma has brought fresh energy and ideas that have revitalized this place." He gestured for her to join them. "The Mercers own several restaurants across the Northeast. They're considering expanding their portfolio." Emma's smile froze slightly as understanding dawned. This wasn't a social visit. It was a business meeting. Were the Mercers looking to buy Salvatore's? The thought sent a chill through her. What would happen to her position, to the family-like atmosphere they'd cultivated, to Lily's daycare arrangement? Upstairs. For the next hour, Emma answered the Mercers' questions about operations, finances, and clientele with professional poise, though anxiety churned beneath her calm exterior. The couple was clearly impressed with her knowledge and management style. "You've built something special here," Mr. Mercer said to Daniel as they prepared to leave. "We'll be in touch soon." After they departed, Emma turned to Daniel, unable to hide her concern any longer. "Are you selling Salvatore's?" Daniel's expression was unreadable. "Come to my office," he said quietly. Once inside with the door closed, Daniel sighed heavily. "I've been thinking about retirement more seriously lately," he admitted. "My sister in Naples is unwell. I want to spend more time there while I still can." Emma felt the floor shift beneath her feet. "I understand," she managed to say, though panic threatened to overwhelm her composure. Everything she'd built here, everything she'd counted on for her and Lily's future, suddenly seemed precarious. "The Mercers have made a generous offer," Daniel continued. They want to add Salvatore's to their restaurant group. They've promised to maintain the staff and basic concept. But it wouldn't be the same, Emma said softly. Corporate ownership never is. Daniel studied her face. No, it wouldn't. He took a folded document from his desk drawer and placed it before her. That's why I've prepared an alternative. Emma opened the document with trembling fingers. It was a partnership agreement, offering her 49% ownership of Salvatore's, with an option to purchase Daniel's remaining shares over a 10-year period. I don't understand, she whispered, scanning the figures. The initial buy-in was significant but not impossible with her savings and the bank loan outlined in an attached letter. I'm offering you first right of refusal, Daniel explained. Before I consider the Mercer's offer, I want to know if you're interested in becoming my partner, with a path to full ownership. Emma looked up, stunned. You'd trust me with your life's work? Who better? Daniel's eyes crinkled with affection. You love this place as I do. You understand its heart, and you've proven yourself 100 times over. But the money... Emma gestured to the figures on the page. This is more than I have. The bank is prepared to finance most of it, based on the restaurant's performance under your management. I'm willing to accept the rest in payments over time. He leaned forward. It's a risk, certainly, but life's greatest rewards often come from the biggest risks. Emma thought of the desperate woman she'd been just a year ago, leaving a note of apology because she couldn't pay for a meal. How impossibly distant that version of herself seemed now. Can I think about it? She asked. This is a huge decision. Of course, the Mercers won't expect an answer for at least a week. Daniel rose, signaling the end of their conversation. Take your time, Emma. Whatever you decide, I'll support you. That evening, Emma sat on her apartment floor with Lily, watching as her daughter stacked colorful blocks, only to knock them down with gleeful giggles. The apartment, a comfortable two-bedroom that she'd rented 3 months ago, was a far cry from the dingy studio they'd once occupied. Photos lined the walls, potted plants thrived on the windowsills, and Lily's toys were scattered across a plush area rug. They had created a home here, a sanctuary. Could she risk it all on a business venture? What if she failed? What if the restaurant faltered under her ownership? The responsibility would be immense, not just for her own livelihood, but for the staff who depended on Salvatore's for their income. Yet beneath the fear lay exhilaration. Her own restaurant. A permanent legacy for Lily. The chance to build something truly meaningful from Daniel's foundation. Emma's phone rang, interrupting her thoughts. It was Cameron. I need to change our visitation schedule, he said without preamble. I've been offered a position in the firm's Chicago office. It's a huge opportunity. I leave in 2 weeks. Emma absorbed this news in silence. After all the legal negotiations, the supervised visits, the gradual building of trust, he was leaving. Just when Lily was beginning to recognize him, to reach for him with a smile. What about Lily? She asked finally. I'll come back for visits when I can, Cameron said, his tone already distant. Maybe you can bring her to Chicago sometimes. My parents would help with the costs. After they hung up, Emma sat motionless, Lily's blocks forgotten around her. Cameron was choosing career over family again. It shouldn't surprise her, yet disappointment cut deep nonetheless. But as the initial hurt faded, a strange clarity took its place. Cameron's decision had inadvertently illuminated her own path forward. She didn't want to be someone who abandoned the things and people she cared about when circumstances changed. She wanted to build something lasting, something that reflected her values and commitment. Salvatore's wasn't just a restaurant to her, it was the place that had saved her when she was at her lowest. It was the community that had embraced her and Lily. It was the springboard from which she had reclaimed her life and her dignity. How could she not fight for it? With sudden resolve, Emma reached for her phone again. Her fingers hovered over Daniel's number, then shifted to another contact, her mother. Mom, it's Emma. I need your advice about something important. The next morning, Emma arrived at Salvatore's early, her conversation with her mother still resonating in her mind. Her mother's words had been simple, but powerful. When you find a place that values you for who you are, that's rare. When you find work that fills you with purpose, that's precious. Don't let fear steal your chance at either. She found Daniel in the kitchen, sampling Chef Antoine's new risotto recipe. His face brightened when he saw her. "Emma, come taste this. Antoine has outdone himself." She accepted a spoonful, savoring the creamy texture and complex flavors. "Incredible," she agreed. "Perfect for the fall menu." Daniel watched her, a knowing look in his eyes. "You've made a decision." Emma nodded. "Yes. I want to accept your offer. I want to become your partner and eventually the owner of Salvatore's." A broad smile spread across Daniel's face. "I hoped you would say that." He turned to Chef Antoine. "Did you hear that, Antoine? Emma is going to be your boss someday." The chef grinned. "As if she isn't already. This is excellent news. We celebrate tonight with special dinner, yes?" As word spread through the staff, reactions were uniformly positive. Marco hugged her. Gabriella wept happy tears. Even stoic Rahim offered a rare smile and handshake. Their acceptance and excitement only reinforced her conviction that she was making the right choice. The following days passed in a whirlwind of paperwork, meetings with bank representatives, and discussions with Daniel about the transition. They agreed that he would remain actively involved for the next year, gradually transferring more responsibility to Emma while mentoring her through the aspects of ownership she had yet to master. 1 week after accepting Daniel's offer, Emma signed the partnership agreement in his office, her hand steady despite the magnitude of the moment. Daniel opened a bottle of champagne, pouring 2 glasses. "To new beginnings," he toasted, clinking, his glass against hers, "and to old traditions continued. To Salvatore's," Emma added, "past, present, and future." They drank, the effervescence of the champagne matching the bubbly excitement in Emma's chest. She was now part owner of the restaurant that had changed her life. The celebration continued, that evening with a special dinner for staff and their families. Tables were pushed together in the center of the restaurant, creating one long communal setting. Chef Antoine outdid himself with a feast of Salvatore's classics and new creations. Wine flowed, laughter echoed, and Lily was passed from lap to lap, the restaurant's collective child. As Emma looked around the table at these people who had become her family, she felt a fullness that transcended professional accomplishment. This was what Cameron would never understand: the richness of community, the satisfaction of creating something meaningful with others. Her mother had flown in for the occasion, her pride in Emma's achievement evident in her misty eyes and frequent hugs. Even Mrs. Chen had joined them, delighting in seeing Lily in this environment. After dinner, as staff cleared plates and refreshed glasses, Daniel clinked his fork against his wine glass, calling for attention. "I want to say a few words," he began, his accent more pronounced with emotion. "When I opened Salvatore's 30 years ago, I had a vision of creating not just a restaurant, but a place where people felt at home, where the food nourished the body and the atmosphere nourished the soul." He paused, looking around the table. "For many years I believed that vision would die with me, that without a child of my own to pass this legacy to, Salvatore's would inevitably change hands and lose its heart." His gaze settled on Emma. Then, one cold night, a young mother came in seeking warmth and left a note that spoke volumes about her character. In that moment, though I didn't realize it then, the future of Salvatore's was secured. Emma felt tears pricking her eyes as Daniel continued. "In Emma, I found not just a manager of exceptional skill, but a kindred spirit who understands what makes this place special. Someone who leads with both head and heart." He raised his glass. "To Emma, my partner, and eventually my successor. May she guide Salvatore's to heights I never dreamed possible." The toast was met with enthusiastic cheers and applause. Emma rose, blinking back tears as Daniel embraced her. "Thank you," she whispered. "I won't let you down." "I know you won't," he replied simply. Later that night, after most guests had departed, and Lily slept peacefully in the office, Emma and Daniel sat at the bar, sharing a quiet moment. "I never asked you," Emma said, sipping her digestive. How you found my phone number that day after I left the note. Daniel chuckled. Ah, that. You had filled out one of our customer feedback cards when you first arrived. Chance to win a free dinner, I believe it said. Emma smiled at the irony. So I did get a free dinner after all. You got much more than that, Daniel said softly. And so did I. The partnership began smoothly, with Emma easing into her expanded role while Daniel provided guidance and support. They complemented each other well, his experience balancing her innovation, her energy revitalizing his established practices. As autumn deepened into winter, they introduced several successful initiatives. A holiday catering service that quickly booked solid cooking classes on Sunday mornings and special tasting menus that showcased Chef Antoine's creativity. Emma completed her business courses with top marks and enrolled in advanced restaurant management classes at the local Culinary Institute. Each new piece of knowledge she acquired was immediately applied to Salvatore's operations, further refining their systems and offerings. By December, her confidence as co-owner had grown substantially. She no longer second-guessed her decisions or felt like an imposter playing at entrepreneurship. Salvatore's was partly hers now, and she embraced the responsibility with determination and pride. The restaurant's success allowed her to provide Lily with a Christmas she could only have dreamed of the previous year. A beautifully decorated apartment, presents beneath a real tree, and the security of knowing their future was stable. Cameron sent a package of expensive toys from Chicago, but his promised visit was cancelled due to work commitments. Emma found she wasn't surprised, nor particularly disappointed anymore. On Christmas Eve, Salvatore's hosted a special dinner for staff and regular customers, transforming the restaurant into a winter wonderland of twinkling lights and elegant decorations. Emma wore a deep green dress that complemented her eyes, her hair swept up in a sophisticated style. As she moved through the room, greeting guests and ensuring everything ran smoothly, she caught glimpses of herself in the restaurant's mirrors and barely recognized the confident woman reflected there. Daniel found her near the dessert table, sampling Chef Antoine's traditional Italian Christmas cookies. "You've created magic tonight," he said, gesturing to the festive scene around them. "Look how happy everyone is." Emma smiled, accepting the compliment. It was a team effort. Always modest, Daniel shook his head. "Take the credit you deserve, Emma. The best leaders do." As midnight approached, snow began to fall outside, adding to the enchantment of the evening. Staff and customers alike gathered at the windows to watch the gentle flakes descend, creating a perfect Christmas card scene. Emma stood slightly apart, Lily sleeping against her shoulder, reflecting on the journey that had brought them to this moment. 1 year ago they had been cold, hungry and desperate. Now they stood in the warm glow of success and community, their future bright with possibility. She felt Daniel's presence beside her before he spoke. "What are you thinking about?" he asked gently. "Everything," Emma replied. "How much has changed? How grateful I am." "The past year has been remarkable," Daniel agreed. "For both of us." They stood in companionable silence, watching the snow transform the world outside. "I received a letter today," Daniel said after a moment. "From my sister, in Naples. Her health is improving, but she's asked me to consider spending more time there." Emma turned to look at him. "Will you go?" "I'm thinking about it," he admitted. "Perhaps for a few months in the new year. It would be a good test to see how Salvatore's fares with you fully at the helm." The prospect both excited and intimidated. "Emma, we would miss you," she said honestly, "but we would manage." Daniel smiled. "I have no doubt of that." He touched Lily's sleeping head gently. "This little one is lucky to have you as her mother. She'll grow up seeing what strength and perseverance look like." Emma's throat tightened with emotion. "I'm the lucky one," she whispered, "to have found this place, to have found you." As the snow continued to fall outside Salvatore's windows, Emma felt a profound sense of peace settle over her. Whatever challenges the new year might bring, she was ready to face them, with her restaurant family beside her and Lily in her arms. January brought record snowfall, and with it a temporary slowdown in restaurant traffic. Emma used the quieter period to advantage, implementing renovations to the kitchen and updating the reservation system. She also finalized plans for a Valentine's Day event that promised to be Salvatore's most profitable special occasion yet. Daniel, true to his word, departed for Naples in mid-January, planning to stay through March. Before leaving, he spent a week with Emma, reviewing every aspect of the business and ensuring she felt prepared to handle any situation that might arise. "Call me if you need anything," he insisted as his taxi waited outside. "Day or night?" "We'll be fine," Emma assured him, though butterflies fluttered in her stomach at the thought of 3 months with full responsibility for Salvatore's. "Enjoy your sister and the Italian sunshine." His absence was felt immediately. Though Emma had essentially been running daily operations for months, Daniel's presence had provided a safety net. The knowledge that someone with decades of experience was there to consult if problems arose. Now she stood alone, and the weight of sole leadership pressed heavily on her shoulders. She found herself working longer hours, double-checking decisions, and lying awake at night, worrying about details that had never troubled her before. Marco noticed her strain 2 weeks into Daniel's absence. He found her in the office late one night, surrounded by spreadsheets and receipts, her eyes red-rimmed with fatigue. "Emma," he said gently, "you're going to burn yourself out at this rate." She looked up, startled. She'd thought everyone had gone home hours ago. "I'm fine, just catching up on paperwork." Marco crossed his arms, unconvinced. "Daniel wouldn't want this. He left because he trusts you, not because he expects you to work yourself to death." Emma sighed, rubbing her temples. "I know, it's just, what if I make a mistake? What if something goes wrong and I damage everything he's built? Everything we're building together?" "Things will go wrong," Marco said simply. "That's business, that's life. Daniel knows that better than anyone." He perched on the edge of her desk. "Did you know that in his 2nd year of operation, Daniel accidentally ordered 500 pounds of flour instead of 50? We were finding creative uses for flour for months." Despite her exhaustion, Emma smiled. "He never told me that." "Because it doesn't matter now, it was a mistake. He fixed it and life went on." Marco's expression turned serious. "Daniel chose you as his partner because of who you are, Emma. Not because you're perfect, but because you're committed, intelligent, and capable of learning from the inevitable mistakes." His words penetrated her fatigue. Marco was right. She was holding herself to an impossible standard, trying to be infallible when even Daniel, with all his experience, had made errors along the way. "Thank you," she said softly. "I needed to—" "Hear that? Now go home," Marco urged. "The paperwork will still be here tomorrow, and you need rest." Emma followed his advice, returning to her apartment where Mrs. Chen had put Lily to bed hours earlier. She slept deeply for the first time in weeks, waking refreshed and with a new perspective. From that day forward, she approached her role differently. She trusted her instincts more, delegated appropriate tasks to staff, and accepted that perfect management was an illusion. Mistakes would happen, and she would handle them as they came. This shift in attitude coincided with an unexpected opportunity. A food critic from a prominent regional magazine made an unannounced visit to Salvatore's, resulting in a glowing review that described the restaurant as a perfect blend of traditional Italian warmth and contemporary culinary innovation. The article specifically praised the management, noting the seamless service and attention to detail that elevated the dining experience. The review brought a flood of new customers, keeping the restaurant fully booked despite the usual winter. Slow down. Emma and her staff rose to the challenge, maintaining their high standards even with the increased volume. Valentine's Day proved to be the pinnacle of this success. Emma had created a special menu and ambiance that transformed Salvatore's into the most romantic destination in the area. Every table was reserved weeks in advance, and the evening unfolded flawlessly, with couples lingering over champagne and dessert until well past midnight. As the last guests departed and the staff began cleanup, Emma felt a profound sense of accomplishment. She had faced her fears of leadership and emerged stronger, more confident in her abilities to guide Salvatore's forward. That confidence was tested sooner than she expected. 1 week after Valentine's Day, as a major snowstorm approached the city, Chef Antoine slipped on ice outside his apartment building, breaking his right wrist and several fingers. 6 weeks minimum, he told Emma over the phone, his voice strained with pain and frustration. The doctor says no kitchen work until it heals completely. The news hit like a physical blow. Antoine was the heart of Salvatore's culinary identity. His recipes, his techniques, his standards, all were integral to the restaurant's reputation, and the timing couldn't have been worse, with the restaurant still riding high from the recent publicity. Emma's first instinct was to call Daniel, but she hesitated. He had traveled to Naples to be with his sister and deserved this time away. Besides, this was exactly the kind of challenge she needed to prove herself capable of handling independently. After checking that Antoine had everything he needed for his recovery, Emma called an emergency staff meeting. The mood was somber as she explained the situation. "We have 2 options," she concluded. "We can simplify the menu to items our line. Cooks can prepare without Antoine's direct supervision, or we can bring in a temporary chef." "The second sous chef at Lucia's just left," Gabriella offered. "They might have someone they could spare for a few weeks." Marco shook his head. "Their style is completely different from Antoine's. Our regular customers would notice immediately." As discussion continued, Emma's mind raced through possibilities. Then a memory surfaced, Daniel mentioning that he'd started as a chef before becoming a restaurateur. The recipes that formed Salvatore's core menu were originally his, passed down to Antoine when Daniel stepped back from daily cooking. An idea began to form. "What about Rosa?" she suggested. All heads turned toward the older woman who supervised the children's area upstairs. She had been Daniel's sister-in-law's recommendation, a retired preschool teacher with a gift for childcare. "Rosa," Marco echoed, confused. "Daniel once told me that Rosa was a chef in Italy before she came to America," Emma explained, "that she taught cooking in Naples for years." Rosa, who had been quietly listening, spoke up. "This is true. I worked in restaurants for 20 years before teaching became my second career." "Would you consider helping us?" Emma asked. "Just until Antoine recovers. You could supervise the kitchen, maintain quality control, perhaps even train our line. Cooks on some fundamental techniques." Rosa's eyes lit up with interest. "Daniel's recipes?" "Yes, I know them well. His grandmother taught us both when we were young." The revelation stunned the staff. None of them had realized that Rosa and Daniel shared such history. "You're related to Daniel?" Gabriella asked. Rosa smiled. "My sister was his wife, until cancer took her 15 years ago. I came to America after her death to help him through his grief. I returned to Italy eventually, but we remained close. When he called about helping with the children here, I was happy for a reason to visit again." The pieces fell into place for Emma. Daniel's desire to spend time in Naples with his sister, not a blood relation, but Rosa's sister, his sister-in-law. His willingness to convert the apartment for childcare. His connection to Rosa, who he trusted with the restaurant's youngest patrons. "Would the children's area need to close?" Emma asked, concerned about disrupting the childcare arrangement that so many staff relied upon. "My niece can cover," Rosa assured her. "She has been looking for more hours anyway, and the kitchen is only downstairs. I can check on things if needed." With remarkable efficiency, the transition was arranged. Rosa would oversee the kitchen, with Antoine consulting remotely on special dishes and new menu items. The line cooks would handle most of the actual cooking, with Rosa providing guidance and quality control. The arrangement worked better than anyone had dared hope. Rosa proved to be a natural leader in the kitchen, her decades of experience evident in her calm authority and meticulous standards. Under her supervision, the line cooks flourished, gaining skills and confidence they hadn't developed under Antoine's more intimidating management style. Most importantly, food quality remained consistently excellent. Regular customers commented that certain dishes tasted even more authentic than before, closer to their Italian origins. When Emma finally called Daniel to update him on the situation, 2 weeks after Antoine's accident, he was unsurprised by the solution she'd found. "I wondered when you might discover Rosa's hidden talents," he said, chuckling. "She's the one who taught me to make proper risotto, you know. My wife's family has been in the restaurant business for generations." "Why didn't you tell me?" Emma asked, though without accusation. "Because I wanted you to find your own way," Daniel replied, "to trust your instincts and resources when challenges arose. And you did exactly that." His pride in her decision-making warmed Emma deeply. "The restaurant is doing well," she assured him. "You don't need to worry or cut your trip short." "I never worried," Daniel said simply, "not with you at the helm." After they hung up, Emma sat at her desk reflecting on how much had changed in the past month. What had initially seemed like a crisis, Antoine's injury, had led to unexpected growth. The line cooks were developing new skills. Rosa had found renewed purpose in sharing her culinary expertise, and Emma herself had proven that she could navigate significant challenges without Daniel's direct guidance. Salvatore's wasn't just surviving in his absence, it was evolving in exciting ways, and Emma was evolving with it, growing more fully into her role as a leader and visionary for the restaurant's future. March arrived with gentler weather and a sense of renewal. Antoine returned to the kitchen with a healed wrist and newfound respect for the staff who had maintained Salvatore's standards in his absence. To everyone's delight, Rosa stayed on as a culinary consultant, her expertise complementing Antoine's techniques in ways that enriched the menu. Emma settled into a more sustainable rhythm as her confidence grew. She no longer felt she needed to prove herself with every decision or work excessive hours to demonstrate her commitment. Instead, she focused on strategic initiatives that would strengthen Salvatore's long-term position while ensuring she maintained balance for Lily's sake. One such initiative was a community outreach program inspired by her own experience. Once a month, Salvatore's hosted a special dinner for families facing financial hardship, providing not just meals, but dignity and warmth. The staff volunteered their time, and local businesses contributed ingredients, making the events true community collaborations. "You've created something beautiful here," Daniel observed during their weekly video call. He had extended his stay in Naples through April, finding the Mediterranean climate beneficial for his arthritis. "This is exactly the kind of legacy that gives Salvatore's meaning beyond profit." Emma smiled, pleased by his approval. "It feels like coming full circle," she admitted, "from being the one in need to being able to offer help." Their conversation turned to business matters, the quarterly finances, stronger than projected, staff morale, excellent, and plans for spring menu updates. Emma had grown comfortable with these discussions, no longer intimidated by the financial aspects of restaurant management. As they were about to end the call, Daniel's expression grew serious. "There's something I need to discuss with you," he said. "Something important." Emma's heart skipped. "Is everything okay? Your health?" No, nothing like that," he assured her quickly. "It's about Salvatore's future. I've been thinking about accelerating our timeline." "Accelerating?" "Yes, I'm considering stepping back completely by year's end, making you the majority owner sooner than we'd planned." Emma's breath caught. "That's a big change from our original agreement." "Are you sure?" Daniel nodded. "These months away have shown me two things: that you're more than ready for full leadership, and that I'm ready for a different chapter in my life." He gestured to the sunlit room behind him. "I've reconnected with family here, with old friends, with the rhythms of life in Naples. I'm thinking of dividing my time between here and home going forward." "But what about the financial arrangement?" Emma asked, practical concerns surfacing amid her surprise. "I don't have the capital to buy you out so quickly." "We'll restructure the agreement," Daniel said simply. "Spread the payments over more years, adjust the initial percentages. The details can be worked out. The important question is, are you ready for this step?" Emma considered his question seriously. Was she ready to become the principal owner of Salvatore's, not in 5 or 10 years as originally planned, but within months? The responsibility would be immense, but so would the opportunity to fully realize her vision for the restaurant's future. "Yes," she said finally, with quiet conviction. "I'm ready." Daniel smiled, satisfaction evident in his expression. Good. I'll have the lawyers prepare the paperwork. We can finalize everything when I return next month. After the call ended, Emma sat in the quiet office, processing the implications of their conversation. Sooner than she could have imagined, Salvatore's would be primarily hers, her business, her legacy for Lily. The thought both exhilarated and sobered her. Success brought its own pressures and challenges. Could she maintain what made the restaurant special while guiding it into the future? Would increased business responsibilities take too much time away from Lily? How would she balance it all? A knock at the office door interrupted her thoughts. Marco entered, carrying a manila envelope. Special delivery, he said, placing it on her desk. Messenger just dropped it off. Emma thanked him and opened the envelope, expecting supplier contracts or perhaps legal documents related to her conversation with Daniel. Instead, she found court papers. A petition from Cameron Peters requesting modification of their custody arrangement. Her stomach dropped as she read further. Cameron was seeking joint physical custody, 2 weeks with him in Chicago, 2 weeks with her, beginning when Lily turned 2. This can't be serious, she murmured, though the official stamps and legal language indicated otherwise. Cameron's petition cited his established relationship with Lily through consistent visitation, though most had been via video call since his move, his improved financial situation, and his parents' willingness to provide support and childcare in Chicago. Emma's hands shook slightly as she set the documents down. The timing couldn't be worse. Just as she was preparing to take on greater responsibility at Salvatore's, she faced a custody battle that threatened to separate her from Lily for extended periods. She reached for her phone, then hesitated. Her first instinct was to call Daniel, but she pulled back. This was her personal struggle, not a restaurant matter. Daniel had enough concerns with his sister's health and his own transitions. Besides, she'd been learning to solve problems independently. Instead, she called her lawyer, arranging an urgent appointment for the following morning. Next, she texted Cameron directly. "We need to talk about this petition. Call me tonight after 8 when Lily's asleep." His response came quickly. "Nothing to discuss. This is best for Lily. Time with both parents. My lawyer will handle communication from here." Anger flared in Emma's chest. After barely participating in Lily's life for her first year, after moving away just when he'd started to build a relationship with her, he now wanted to disrupt her stable routine with extended separations and travel, and he wouldn't even discuss it person to person. She took several deep breaths, fighting to maintain her composure. Emotional reactions wouldn't help. She needed to be strategic, to think clearly about Lily's best interests and how to protect them. That evening, after putting Lily to bed, Emma sat at her kitchen table with a legal pad, making notes for her meeting with the lawyer. She listed all the reasons why Cameron's proposal would harm Lily's development: the disruption to her routine, the stress of frequent travel, the separation from her primary caregiver and stable home, but she forced herself to consider the court's perspective as well. Judges typically favored arrangements that gave children meaningful relationships with both parents. Cameron was financially stable, had no history of abuse or neglect, and could provide materially for Lily. His parents, Lily's grandparents, were eager to be part of her life. The situation wasn't black and white. Emma had to acknowledge that, however painful it might be. Her lawyer confirmed this assessment the next morning. "The court is unlikely to deny him increased visitation," she explained gently. "He is the biological father. He's been paying child support and he's established at least some relationship with Lily." "But 2 weeks at a time?" Emma protested. "She's not even 2 years old. She needs consistency, stability." "I agree that his proposal is extreme for a child her age," the lawyer nodded. "That's where we have solid ground to negotiate. Courts generally recognize that young children benefit from shorter, more frequent contact rather than extended separations from either parent." They developed a counter-proposal, gradually increasing visitation, beginning with weekend visits in Emma's city, progressing to longer periods as Lily grew older. No 2-week separations until she was at least school-aged, and even then, consideration would be given to minimizing disruption to her education and activities. This is reasonable and child-focused, the lawyer assured her. It acknowledges Cameron's parental rights while prioritizing Lily's developmental needs. Emma left the meeting feeling marginally better, though the prospect of any court proceedings filled her with dread. The legal process would be expensive, time-consuming, and emotionally draining, just as she was taking on increased responsibility at Salvatore's. For the next week, she compartmentalized ruthlessly, focusing on restaurant operations during work hours and custody strategies at home. She didn't share the situation with her staff, not wanting to burden them with her personal concerns. But the strain began to show in subtle ways: dark circles under her eyes, a slight edge in her voice, moments of distraction during meetings. Marco noticed first, approaching her after a particularly tense interaction with a supplier. "Something's wrong," he said simply, "and you're not telling us." Emma sighed, too exhausted to maintain the pretense. "It's personal. I don't want to bring my problems to work." "Emma," Marco said gently, "you were the one who taught us that Salvatore's is more than a workplace. It's a family. Family members help each other carry burdens." His words broke through her carefully constructed walls. That evening, after closing, she gathered the core staff and told them about Cameron's petition and the impending custody dispute. "I may need to adjust my schedule for court dates," she concluded, "and I might not be at my best during this process. I apologize in advance." The response was immediate and overwhelming. Gabriella, herself a single mother, offered to research child development experts who could testify about attachment needs. Marco volunteered to take on additional managerial duties whenever needed. Antoine promised meals delivered to her home on stressful days. Even Rosa spoke up, offering to accompany Emma to court hearings for moral support. "We stand with you," Gabriella declared, and the others nodded firm agreement. Tears welled in Emma's eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. "I don't know what I'd do without all of you." That night, for the first time since receiving Cameron's petition, Emma slept soundly. The challenges ahead remained daunting, but she no longer faced them alone. Like Salvatore's itself, she had a community of support to sustain her through difficult times. 2 days later, as Emma reviewed weekend reservation numbers with Marco, her phone rang with an unknown Chicago area code. She excused herself to answer. "Emma, this is Margaret Peters, Cameron's mother." Emma's grip tightened on the phone. She had never spoken directly with Cameron's parents, though she knew they'd been pressing him to establish a relationship with Lily. "Mrs. Peters," she responded neutrally. "What can I do for you?" "Please, call me Margaret." The older woman's voice was warm, lacking the hostility Emma had half expected. "I'm calling about this custody situation. I think we need to talk, woman to woman." "I'm listening," Emma said cautiously. "Cameron doesn't know I'm calling," Margaret continued. "But I wanted you to understand our perspective. We've only recently learned about our granddaughter. We're not getting any younger, and we want the chance to know her, to be part of her life." "I understand that," Emma replied, "and I've never wanted to keep Lily from knowing her extended family. But Cameron's proposal, shipping a toddler back and forth across the country every 2 weeks, isn't what's best for her." There was a pause. Then Margaret sighed. "I agree with you." Emma blinked in surprise. "You do?" "Yes. I've raised 3 children, and I know how important routine and stability are at Lily's age." Margaret's voice softened. "Cameron is eager. He wants to make up for lost time, to be the father he should have been from the beginning. His heart is in the right place, but his approach is wrong." Emma sank into her office chair, processing this unexpected ally. "What are you suggesting?" "A compromise," Margaret said. "One that respects your role as Lily's primary parent while still allowing our family to build a relationship with her. Perhaps we could visit you regularly at first, then gradually work up to Lily visiting us, starting with short trips, with you accompanying her if you'd like." It was essentially the same approach Emma's lawyer had suggested, but coming from Cameron's mother, it carried different weight. If Margaret supported this more gradual approach, perhaps Cameron could be persuaded to abandon his aggressive legal strategy. "I'd be open to discussion," Emma said carefully. But Cameron has instructed me to communicate through lawyers. Leave Cameron to me, Margaret said with the confidence of a mother who knew how to handle her son. Robert and I are planning to visit next weekend. Could we meet with you then, just to talk? Emma agreed, cautious optimism blooming within her. Perhaps this situation didn't need to become an adversarial court battle after all. Perhaps with Margaret's influence, they could reach an arrangement that truly prioritized Lily's needs over adult agendas. After hanging up, Emma sat quietly, considering this new development. Throughout her struggles, from poverty to single, parenthood to restaurant management, she had learned that solutions often emerged from unexpected directions. Margaret's call felt like yet another reminder that being open to possibilities rather than locked in defensive postures often yielded better outcomes. With this mindset, she returned to her work, tackling the day's challenges with renewed energy. Whatever came next in the custody situation, she would approach it as she had approached every other obstacle in her path, with determination, resilience, and a willingness to find the path forward that best served not just her own interests, but those of everyone involved, especially Lily, who deserved a family unified in their love for her, even if they lived in different cities and played different roles in her life. April brought gentle rains and new beginnings. Daniel returned from Naples, tanned and revitalized, full of stories and culinary inspirations from his extended stay. He slipped back into restaurant operations with ease, though deliberately deferring to Emma's leadership in ways that signaled the shifting ownership dynamics to the staff. Meanwhile, Margaret and Robert Peters' visit proved transformative for the custody situation. Emma had prepared herself for difficult negotiations, but instead found Cameron's parents to be thoughtful, reasonable people genuinely interested in Lily's well-being. They spent a weekend getting to know their granddaughter, marveling at her growth and personality, taking hundreds of photos to share with extended family. More importantly, they sat down with Emma for a frank discussion about Lily's needs and how to balance them with Cameron's desire for involvement. "We've spoken extensively with Cameron," Margaret explained over coffee at Emma's apartment, while Robert entertained Lily in the living room. "He's agreed to withdraw the petition for joint physical custody." Relief flooded through Emma. "Thank you," she said simply. "Instead," Margaret continued, "we'd like to propose a graduated schedule. Perhaps one weekend a month here in town to start, with one of us accompanying Cameron. As Lily gets older and more comfortable, short visits to Chicago during holidays, building to longer stays during summer breaks when she's school-aged." It was a reasonable approach, one that respected Lily's developmental needs while still fostering her relationship with her father and paternal grandparents. Emma agreed readily, grateful to avoid protracted legal proceedings. "There's one more thing," Margaret added, her expression softening. "Robert and I would like to establish a college fund for Lily. We've set up educational trusts for all our grandchildren, and we want to do the same for her." Emma's initial instinct was to decline, to assert her independence, to prove she could provide for Lily without their help. But she recognized this reaction as pride, not wisdom. A college fund would give Lily opportunities, security, choices. To reject it would be to prioritize her own feelings over her daughter's future. "That's very generous," she said instead. "Lily is lucky to have grandparents who care so much about her future." By the time the Peters departed, they had established not just a visitation framework, but the foundation for a cooperative, co-parenting relationship. Cameron, influenced by his parents' intervention, dropped his aggressive legal stance and committed to the more gradual approach they had outlined. "It won't always be easy," Margaret acknowledged as they said goodbye at the airport. "There will be disagreements and adjustments needed, but if we all keep Lily's needs at the center, we'll find our way through." Emma hugged the older woman, feeling genuine affection where she had expected only tense negotiation. "Thank you for reaching out," she said, "for being the bridge." Margaret smiled, her eyes misty. "That's what grandmothers do, dear. We hold families together even when they're complicated." With the custody issues settling into a workable arrangement, Emma turned her full attention back to Salvatore's. Daniel had returned with a renewed vision for the restaurant. Not a dramatic departure, but an evolution that honored their Italian roots while embracing contemporary influences. The restaurants in Naples are changing, he explained as they discussed menu updates. They're maintaining traditional techniques but incorporating global influences, sustainable practices, farm-to-table philosophies. I think Salvatore's should do the same. Emma agreed enthusiastically. She had been considering similar adjustments, but had hesitated to suggest significant changes to Daniel's established concept. His endorsement freed her to share her own ideas for Salvatore's evolution. Together, they drafted a 5-year plan that included seasonal menu rotations, expanded wine offerings focusing on small Italian vineyards, cooking classes, and eventually a small market attached to the restaurant, selling house-made pastas, sauces, and imported Italian products. "This is exactly the direction I hoped you would take Salvatore's," Daniel said, satisfaction evident in his voice. Not static preservation, but thoughtful growth. As they finalized the plan, Daniel brought up the ownership transition. "The lawyers have prepared the new agreement," he said, sliding a folder across the desk. "Take it home, review it carefully. We can sign next week if you're comfortable with the terms." Emma opened the folder, scanning the first page. The document outlined an accelerated transition schedule, with Emma taking 70% ownership. Immediately upon signing, Daniel would retain 30% for 2 years, providing continuity and mentorship before selling his remaining stake to Emma through a structured payment plan. "This is more generous than what we discussed," Emma noted, looking up. "You're giving me majority control immediately." Daniel nodded. "You've earned it. And practically speaking, you've been running Salvatore's for months already. This just makes official what's already reality." Emma promised to review the agreement thoroughly before making her final decision, though in her heart she had already accepted this new chapter. As she left Daniel's office, a sense of profound gratitude washed over her. How far she had come from that desperate night when she'd left a note of apology for an unpaid meal. The next morning, as Emma settled Lily with Rosa in the upstairs daycare before starting her workday, her phone chimed with a text from Marco. "Come to the kitchen ASAP. Problem with delivery." She hurried downstairs, expecting a missing order or quality issue with a shipment. Instead, she found the entire staff gathered in the kitchen, wearing conspiratorial smiles. "Surprise!" they shouted in unison as she entered. The kitchen island held a cake decorated with the Salvatore's logo and "Congratulations, Boss" written in chocolate. Beside it sat a wrapped gift and a bottle of champagne. "What's all this?" Emma asked, genuinely confused. "Daniel told us about the ownership change," Marco explained. "We wanted to celebrate you." "But I haven't signed anything yet," Emma protested. Chef Antoine shrugged. "Formality only. You have been our true leader for months already." Gabriella stepped forward, handing Emma the wrapped gift. "From all of us." Emma unwrapped it to find a beautiful leather portfolio embossed with her name, and Proprietor Salvatore's in elegant script. Inside were custom business cards with the same title. "We had to guess on the exact title," Marco admitted. "Daniel just said you would be the boss." Tears welled in Emma's eyes. "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll keep leading us forward," Gabriella suggested. "Say you'll remember us little people when you're running a restaurant empire." Laughter rippled through the group, breaking the emotional tension. Chef Antoine opened the champagne with a dramatic pop, and plastic glasses were distributed for a proper toast. "To Emma," Marco declared, raising his glass, "who came to us by chance and stayed by choice, who turned a note of apology into a legacy of excellence." "To Emma," the staff echoed. As the impromptu celebration continued around her, Emma absorbed the moment fully. These people, this place, had become the foundation of her new life. Whatever challenges lay ahead, she would face them with this community behind her. Later that day, after signing the ownership transfer papers with Daniel and the lawyers, Emma took a rare afternoon off. She picked up Lily from the daycare area, buckled her into the car seat of her recently purchased used car, and drove to her mother's new apartment on the other side of town. Her mother had moved from Arizona the previous month, unable to resist the pull of daily interaction with her only grandchild now that Emma's situation was stable. She had found a small but comfortable apartment in a senior community just 20 minutes from Salvatore's. "There's my sweet girl," her mother exclaimed as they entered, scooping Lily up for hugs and kisses. "And there's my restaurateur daughter," Emma smiled, setting down Lily's diaper bag. "News travels fast. Daniel called me this morning," her mother admitted. "He wanted to make sure I'd be free for a celebration dinner tonight." "Tonight?" Emma hadn't been informed of any dinner plans. Her mother nodded. 7 o'clock at Salvatore's private party. Daniel's arranged everything. He just asked me to keep you occupied this afternoon while they prepare." Emma shook her head, laughing. "Is there anything that man doesn't think of?" "He cares about you," her mother said simply. "You've become the daughter he never had." The observation struck Emma with its truth. Daniel's mentorship had evolved into something deeper, a familial bond that transcended their business relationship. He had seen potential in her when she was at her lowest, invested in her growth, celebrated her successes, and now entrusted her with his life's work. That evening, dressed in her finest clothes with her mother and Lily beside her, Emma entered Salvatore's through the front door as a guest rather than an employee for the first time in over a year. The restaurant had been transformed. White. Tablecloths, candles, flower arrangements, and a string quartet playing softly in the corner. Staff members greeted her with warm smiles and congratulations as Daniel led her to the center table, where the Peters family, Cameron, Margaret, and Robert, already waited. Their presence surprised her, but Daniel had apparently invited everyone significant in Lily's life to celebrate this milestone. As Emma took her seat, looking around at the gathered faces, her restaurant family, her actual family, even her daughter's paternal family, she felt a completeness she had once thought impossible. From the fragments of a broken life, she had constructed something beautiful and whole. Daniel stood, raising his glass. "To new beginnings," he toasted. Hand to Emma, who reminds us all that it's never too late to start again. Summer arrived with record heat and booming business at Salvatore's. The restaurant's patio became the most sought-after dining spot in the neighborhood, with reservations required weeks in advance for weekend evenings. Emma's seasonal menu changes proved hugely popular, blending traditional Italian comfort foods with lighter, locally sourced summer ingredients. As majority owner, Emma implemented several initiatives that reflected her vision for Salvatore's future. She established a formal internship program with the local Culinary Institute, providing opportunities for aspiring chefs and service professionals to learn in a real restaurant environment. She expanded the community dinner program to twice, monthly, partnering with local shelters to identify families who could benefit from the experience. She even launched a small catering operation focused on intimate events and corporate lunches. Each change strengthened Salvatore's position as both a successful business and a neighborhood cornerstone. Revenue increased steadily, allowing Emma to provide raises for the staff and invest in kitchen equipment upgrades. The restaurant received another glowing review, this time from a national publication that praised its perfect balance of innovation and tradition. Daniel, true to his word, began dividing his time between the city and Naples, spending 2 months in Italy followed by 2 months at home. During his absences, he stayed connected through weekly video calls, but increasingly delegated decisions to Emma. When present, he focused on mentoring her through the ownership aspects she was still mastering: long-term financial planning, property management, supplier contract negotiations. Their partnership dynamic evolved naturally, with Emma gaining confidence as Daniel gradually stepped back. By August, she was handling 90% of operations independently, consulting him only on major decisions that would have long-term implications for the business. One such decision presented itself mid-month when the owner of the vacant storefront adjacent to Salvatore's approached Emma about selling the property. The space had previously housed a bookstore that closed during the pandemic and had remained empty for nearly 3 years. "It's a good opportunity to expand," Daniel acknowledged when Emma brought the offer to him. "The market idea we discussed could work well there, with a connecting doorway from the restaurant." Emma nodded, excitement building as she envisioned the possibilities. "We could start small. House-made pastas, sauces, imported olive oils and wines, then expand based on customer response." "The timing is good too," Daniel added. Interest rates are favorable, and your first year's financial performance would support the additional loan. Emma had run the numbers carefully, projecting costs and potential revenue for the market concept. While expansion carried risks, particularly in her first year of ownership, the adjoining location was too perfect to ignore. If someone else purchased it, they might not have another opportunity to grow Salvatore's footprint for years. After thorough discussion and financial analysis, Emma decided to move forward. The purchase would stretch her resources, but seemed a sound investment in Salvatore's future. With Daniel's blessing, she made an offer on the property, which was quickly accepted. As preparations for the expansion began, Emma found herself working longer hours than ever. Between managing the restaurant, overseeing renovation plans for the new space, and maintaining quality time with Lily, who was now an energetic toddler with definite opinions, Emma's days stretched from dawn until well past midnight. The strain began to show, particularly as Daniel departed for another stay in Naples, leaving her to handle both normal operations and the expansion planning alone. She lost weight, developed persistent headaches, and found herself snapping at staff over minor issues, behavior completely out of character for her normally patient management style. Marco finally confronted her after she'd spent 10 minutes berating a server for a simple drink order mistake. "This isn't you," he said bluntly, pulling her aside. "You need to slow down before you burn out completely." Emma started to dismiss. His concern then caught herself. He was right. She had been driving herself relentlessly, trying to prove she could handle everything perfectly on her own. "I'm just tired," she admitted. "There's so much happening at once." Marco's expression softened. "Then delegate more. That's why you have a team. That's why Daniel promoted me to assistant manager last month." Emma sighed, recognizing the truth in his words. She had been reluctant to relinquish control, particularly with the expansion underway, but trying to personally oversee every detail was unsustainable. "You're right," she conceded. "I need to trust the team more, including you." That evening, instead of staying late to review construction estimates, Emma went home at a reasonable hour. She spent the evening building a block tower with Lily, reading bedtime stories, and then taking a long bath before falling into the deepest sleep she'd had in weeks. The next morning, refreshed and clear-headed, she called a staff meeting to reorganize responsibilities. Marco would take over day-to-day management of the restaurant operations, allowing Emma to focus on the expansion project. Gabriella would handle the scheduling that had previously consumed hours of Emma's time each week. Antoine would train the sous chefs to handle more menu planning and quality control. "I've been trying to do everything myself," Emma acknowledged to the assembled staff. "That's not sustainable, and it's not fair to all of you. I'm learning that being an owner means trusting others to excel in their areas of expertise." The staff responded with enthusiasm to their expanded responsibilities, each stepping up to shoulder part of the burden Emma had been carrying alone. Within days, the positive effects were evident, not just in Emma's reduced stress levels, but in the staff's increased engagement and creativity. September brought the first major challenge to this new arrangement. Just as construction began on the connecting doorway between Salvatore's and the new market space, Cameron arrived for his monthly visit with unexpected news. "I've been offered a partnership track position," he told Emma over coffee, while Lily played with Margaret at a nearby table. "But it would require relocating to the London office for at least 2 years. Emma absorbed this information, immediately calculating the implications for their custody arrangement. "When would this happen?" "January," Cameron replied. "If I accept, which I want to do, but—" He hesitated, glancing at Lily. "I don't want to disappear from her life just when we're building a relationship." Emma studied him, surprised by his evident conflict. The old Cameron would have prioritized career without hesitation. This consideration for Lily's needs represented genuine growth. "Technology helps," she offered after a moment. "Video calls, scheduled times for stories or virtual play. It's not the same as being physically present, but it maintains the connection." Cameron nodded. "That's what my mother suggested too, and maybe longer visits during my vacation times. if you'd be open to that. I think we could work something out, Emma said carefully, as long as it's planned well in advance to minimize disruption to her routine. Relief spread across Cameron's face. Thank you for understanding. I was worried you'd use this against me legally. This isn't about winning or losing, Cameron. It's about what's best for Lily. Emma surprised herself with the sincerity behind her words. Their relationship had evolved from antagonism to something resembling respectful co-parenting. She deserves to know her father, even if he's across an ocean. Their conversation shifted to practical arrangements, how to maintain Cameron's presence in Lily's life during his London assignment, how to handle extended visits when he returned to the States, how to ensure consistency and stability for Lily amid these changes. As they talked, Emma realized how much her perspective had broadened since that day in Daniel's office, when Cameron had first reappeared in their lives. Back then, she had seen him solely as a threat to her hard-won stability. Now she recognized that Lily's life was enriched by having more people to love her, even if those relationships took unconventional forms. That evening, after Cameron and his mother had returned to their hotel, Emma found herself reflecting on the many ways her life had expanded over the past 18 months. From a struggling single mother with dwindling options, she had become a successful restaurant owner with a supportive community, a co-parenting relationship that prioritized her daughter's needs, and a clear vision for her future. The restaurant expansion, while challenging, was progressing well. The custody situation, once a source of constant anxiety, had evolved into a functional arrangement. Even her relationship with Daniel had matured from mentor-mentee to genuine partnership. Yet amid this growth lingered a subtle restlessness, a sense that something remained incomplete in her personal life. Emma had devoted herself so completely to Lily and Salvatore's that she'd had little time or energy for anything else. Her identity had become defined almost exclusively by motherhood and work. As she stood at the construction site that would soon connect Salvatore's to its new market expansion, Emma wondered if perhaps it was time to expand her own life in similar ways, to create openings for new experiences, new relationships, new aspects of herself to develop. The thought both frightened and exhilarated her. Like the restaurant itself, perhaps she was ready for a thoughtful evolution, not abandoning what made her who she was, but finding room for growth in new directions. With that possibility hovering in her mind, Emma returned to the restaurant to close up for the night. As she checked the kitchen one last time, she found Chef Antoine still there, experimenting with what appeared to be dessert preparations. "Working late?" she asked, leaning against the doorway. He looked up with a smile. "Testing something for tomorrow's special." He gestured to a plate of delicate pastries. "Try one." Emma picked up a pastry, biting into the flaky exterior to discover a warm, spiced apple, filling with hints of cinnamon and something unexpected, cardamom perhaps. "It's wonderful," she said truthfully. "What inspired this?" "Change," Antoine said simply. "The seasons are turning, summer becoming autumn. It's my favorite time of year, holding on to the warmth of what's been while welcoming what's coming." His words resonated deeply with Emma, capturing exactly what she'd been feeling about her own life. She was standing at a threshold between seasons, grateful for what had brought her to this point, yet increasingly ready to step forward into whatever came next. "Seasons change," she agreed softly. "And if we're wise, we change with them." The Salvatore's market opened its doors on a crisp November morning, just in time for the holiday season. The connecting doorway between the restaurant and market created a natural flow for diners to browse specialty products after their meals. Handmade pastas, sauces prepared from Chef Antoine's recipes, imported Italian cheeses, artisanal olive, oils and wines, selected by Daniel from small family vineyards. The market's design reflected Emma's vision perfectly. Warm wood shelving, soft lighting, and displays that told the story behind each product. One wall featured photographs of Salvatore's staff at work, while another showcased the Italian producers whose goods lined the shelves. The space felt like a natural extension of the restaurant, elegant yet approachable, sophisticated without pretension. Opening day exceeded even Emma's optimistic projections. Regular customers arrived in droves, curious about the new venture and eager to support its success. By closing time, the market had generated almost triple the expected revenue, with the pasta and sauce selections nearly sold out. "We'll need to increase production immediately," Emma told the team during their post-opening debrief, "and perhaps add another pasta-making shift." The successful launch marked the culmination of months of planning and work. But for Emma, it represented something more significant. The first major expansion conceived and executed primarily under her leadership. While Daniel had provided guidance from afar, the market was fundamentally her creation, shaped by her understanding of what their customers wanted and her vision for Salvatore's evolution. Daniel returned from Naples the following week, eager to see the completed project. His approval was evident as Emma guided him through the space, explaining each decision and highlighting particularly successful elements. "You've created something special here," he said, genuine pride in his voice. "Something that honors Salvatore's traditions while moving boldly forward." His words validated what Emma had begun to recognize in herself, a growing confidence in her instincts as both a business owner and a leader. The past year had transformed her in ways that extended far beyond professional skills. She had discovered reserves of strength, creativity, and resilience she hadn't known she possessed. This personal growth became even more apparent as Thanksgiving approached. For the first time, Salvatore's would close for the holiday, allowing staff to spend the day with family. Emma hosted dinner at her apartment, which had recently been upgraded to a spacious 3-bedroom in a family-friendly neighborhood. The guest list reflected the blended community she had built around herself and Lily. Her mother, Daniel, Rosa, Marco and his boyfriend, Gabriella and her son, and even Cameron, who had flown in specifically for the holiday before his January departure for London. As Emma moved around her kitchen, preparing traditional dishes alongside Italian specialties suggested by Daniel, she marveled at the unlikely gathering about to share her table. 2 years ago, she had been alone and desperate, facing the prospect of a bleak holiday season with no resources and dwindling hope. Now her home overflowed with people who cared about her and Lily, who had chosen to be part of their lives. When everyone arrived and settled around the extended dining table, Emma took a moment to absorb the scene. Her mother was deep in conversation with Rosa about childhood education. Marco and his boyfriend were entertaining Lily and Gabriella's son, with shadow puppets against the wall. Daniel and Cameron were discussing international business practices, finding unexpected common ground despite their different fields. It was chaotic, warm, and utterly perfect, not because everything was flawless, but because it was real. These relationships hadn't been inherited or prescribed. They had been built deliberately through shared experiences, mutual respect, and the conscious choice to care for one another. "Before we eat," Emma said, standing to gain everyone's attention, "I'd like to say something." The conversations quieted as faces turned toward her. 2 years ago, I thought I had reached the end of my rope. I was alone, frightened and unsure how I would provide for Lily from one day to the next. Her voice wavered slightly as the memories surfaced. Daniel reached over to squeeze her hand encouragingly. "Then I found Salvatore's, or perhaps it found me, and through that single encounter my life changed completely." She looked around the table, meeting each person's eyes. "Some of you gave me a chance when I desperately needed one. Others came into my life more recently. But all of you have contributed to the journey that brought us to this moment." She raised her glass. "So today, I'm thankful not just for material blessings or professional success, but for second chances, for the kindness of strangers who become family, for the belief that anyone's story can change with a single act of compassion." The toast resonated deeply with everyone present, each recognizing their own role in the narrative Emma had described. As they enjoyed the meal together, conversation flowed naturally between people from different worlds who nonetheless found connection through their shared care for Emma and Lily. After dinner, as guests helped with cleanup or relaxed in the living room, Cameron approached Emma privately. "I wanted to thank you," he said, his typical confidence tempered by sincerity. for including me today, for letting me be part of Lily's life even after I handled things so badly in the beginning." Emma studied him, noting the genuine change in his demeanor over the past year. "People deserve second chances," she said simply. "I got mine. It seemed right that you should have yours too." Cameron nodded, understanding the grace extended to him. "Before I leave for London, I wanted to make sure everything is legally clear regarding Lily's future. I've had my lawyer draw up papers that formalize our agreement, but also," he hesitated, "that designate you as her sole legal guardian if anything should happen to me." The unexpected statement caught Emma off guard. Such an arrangement acknowledged her primacy in Lily's life in a way no court-ordered custody agreement had. "That's a significant step," she said carefully. "It's the right one," Cameron replied. "You've proven yourself the kind of parent I hope to become someday. Lily couldn't be in better hands." Before Emma could respond, Lily herself toddled over, arms raised to be picked up. Cameron lifted her smoothly, making her giggle with a gentle toss before handing her to Emma. "Dada bye?" Lily asked, her vocabulary expanding weakly. "Not yet, sweet pea," Cameron assured her. "But soon. And then I'll see you on the computer, remember? Like we practiced?" Lily nodded seriously, having been prepared for the coming arrangement with simple explanations and video call rehearsals. As Cameron moved away to join the others, Emma held Lily close, overwhelmed by the journey they had traveled together. From the terrified mother clutching her infant in the cold, to the confident woman standing in her own home, surrounded by chosen family, every step had shaped them both. December brought the holiday rush to Salvatore's and its new market. Emma had prepared extensively, hiring seasonal staff, extending hours, and creating special menu offerings and gift packages. The restaurant was booked solid through New Year's, and the market did brisk business in holiday gift baskets and catering orders. Despite the hectic pace, Emma maintained the work-life balance she had fought to establish, ensuring quality time with Lily while trusting her team to handle more operational responsibilities. The delegation strategies she had implemented earlier in the year proved invaluable now, allowing Salvatore's to thrive during its busiest season without requiring her constant presence. On Christmas Eve, the restaurant hosted its annual staff celebration after closing to the public. Emma had arranged personal gifts for each employee, along with year-end bonuses that reflected the business's strong performance. The atmosphere was festive and familial, strengthening the bonds that made Salvatore's more than just a workplace. As midnight approached, Daniel asked for everyone's attention. He stood at the head of the long table they had assembled in the dining room, his eyes twinkling with the reflection of 1,000 tiny lights strung throughout the restaurant. "Before we end this wonderful evening," he began, "I have an announcement to make." He gestured for Emma to join him. "As many of you know, I've been gradually transferring ownership of Salvatore's to Emma over the past year. Tonight, I'm pleased to share that the process is complete." Murmurs of surprise rippled through the gathering. While everyone had been aware of the transition plan, the final transfer wasn't expected until spring. "Emma has exceeded every expectation I had when I first offered her partnership," Daniel continued. "She has honored Salvatore's traditions while boldly leading it into the future. The restaurant has never been more successful, nor its future more secure." He turned to Emma, taking her hands in his. "My part in this story is complete. Salvatore's is now entirely yours, to guide, to grow, to make your own legacy." Emma stared at him, stunned. "But the agreement?" "We still had payments. Scheduled for years," Daniel smiled. "Consider it a Christmas gift. The lawyers have filed the final paperwork. Salvatore's belongs to you now, free and clear." The staff erupted in applause and cheers as Emma struggled to find words. Eventually, she simply embraced Daniel, too overwhelmed for speech. What he had given her wasn't just a business, but a future, security for herself and Lily, purpose for her days, a community that had become family. When she finally found her voice, Emma addressed the gathered staff, her words simple but heartfelt. "Salvatore's has never belonged to just one person. It belongs to all of us. Everyone who serves a meal, who welcomes a guest, who creates the experience that keeps people coming back. I may hold the title now, but we all share the responsibility and the joy of what we are building together." The celebration continued late into the night, a fitting conclusion to a year of transformation and growth. As staff eventually departed with warm hugs and holiday wishes, Emma and Daniel remained behind, sitting at the bar with glasses of aged grappa. "Are you sure about this?" Emma asked, still processing the magnitude of his gift. "Accelerating the timeline so dramatically." Daniel nodded, his expression serene. "Completely sure. My sister has asked me to stay in Naples permanently. Her health is stable but fragile, and being near family has become more important to me as I age." "You'll always have a home here," Emma assured him quickly. "Whatever you decide." "I know that," Daniel smiled. "But it's time for me to begin. A new chapter just as you have, and I couldn't leave until I knew that everything I've built was in the right hands." They sat in companionable silence for a moment, each reflecting on the journey that had brought them together and the diverging paths now before them. "I'll never be able to thank you enough," Emma said finally, "for everything you've given me, for seeing something in me that day that I couldn't even see in myself." Daniel shook his head gently. "You earned this, Emma. Every step of the way. My only role was opening a door. You're the one who walked through it and transformed everything on the other side." After Daniel left for the evening, Emma lingered alone in the restaurant, absorbing the reality of her new status. Salvatore's was completely hers now, a responsibility that might once have terrified her, but now filled her with quiet determination and purpose. She walked slowly through the dining room, trailing her fingers across the backs of chairs, remembering the desperate woman who had once sat in the corner, unable to pay for her meal. How impossibly distant that version of herself seemed now. The journey from that night to this one had been marked by challenges, setbacks, and moments of doubt. But through it all, she had kept moving forward, building something meaningful, not just for herself, but for Lily and for the community that had embraced them. As she prepared to leave, Emma noticed the table where she had sat that fateful night, the table where she had left a note of apology before fleeing into the cold. Daniel had later told her he kept that note, framed in his home office as a reminder of how single moments can change lives. Emma touched the table gently, a silent acknowledgement of its significance in her story. Then, with a deep breath, she turned toward the door, toward home, toward the future she had fought so hard to create. Spring arrived with a gentle persistence, coaxing buds from branches and warming the air with promises of renewal. Salvatore's flourished under Emma's sole ownership, its reputation growing beyond the neighborhood to attract diners from across the city. The market expansion had proven so successful that Emma was considering additional retail products, perhaps even a cookbook featuring Salvatore's most beloved recipes. Lily, now approaching her 3rd birthday, had blossomed into a spirited, talkative child with her mother's determined nature and bright smile. She divided her time between the apartment, the restaurant's daycare area, now expanded to accommodate children of additional staff members, and weekly video calls with Cameron in London. Despite the physical distance, he had maintained consistent contact, becoming a reliable presence in Lily's life in ways Emma hadn't initially believed possible. The restaurant itself had evolved under Emma's leadership, reflecting her vision while honoring its foundations. She had added brunch service on weekends, rotating seasonal chef specials, and a mentorship program for aspiring restaurateurs from disadvantaged backgrounds. Each innovation strengthened Salvatore's connection to its community while ensuring its continuing relevance. Daniel had settled permanently in Naples but remained connected through regular calls and occasional visits. His cottage in the hills outside the city had become a retreat for Emma and Lily as well, with 2 extended stays during the past year providing opportunities for Lily to experience her Italian heritage and for Emma to explore culinary traditions at their source. On a particularly beautiful April morning, Emma arrived at Salvatore's earlier than usual. The restaurant wouldn't open for hours, but she wanted quiet time to finalize plans for its upcoming 5th anniversary celebration, an event that would mark not just the milestone, but also commemorate 2 years since she had become its full owner. As she unlocked the door, memories washed over her. entering this same space as a desperate young mother seeking warmth, returning at Daniel's invitation, not knowing what awaited her, gradually transforming from employee to manager to owner. The journey felt both impossibly long and surprisingly brief, as significant journeys often do. Inside, Emma moved through her morning routine with practiced ease, checking deliveries, reviewing reservations, making notes for the day's staff meeting. She had just settled at her desk with coffee when the door chimed unexpectedly. Marco entered earlier than his usual arrival time, carrying a worn-looking envelope. "Found this while cleaning out the old storage cabinets," he explained, placing it on her desk. "Thought you might want to see it." Emma opened the envelope to find a familiar piece of paper, the customer feedback card she had filled out that first night at Salvatore's, hoping to win a free meal. The one that had enabled Daniel to contact her after she fled without paying. "I can't believe he kept this," she murmured, touching the card gently. "Daniel kept everything," Marco smiled. "Said you never know when something might become important." How right Daniel had been. This simple card, a marketing tool most customers discarded without thought, had changed the entire trajectory of her life. After Marco left to begin his prep work, Emma sat with the card, reflecting on the countless small decisions and chance events that had led her to this moment. If she hadn't entered Salvatore's that cold night, if she hadn't filled out this card, if Daniel hadn't been the kind of person who reached out to help a stranger, the interconnected web of choices and circumstances that had created her present reality seemed both random and somehow meant to be. Not predetermined by fate, perhaps, but shaped by the consistent choices of people who valued kindness and second chances. Emma tucked the card carefully into her desk drawer, a tangible reminder of beginnings and the unpredictable nature of life's turning points. Then she returned to planning the anniversary celebration, wanting it to honor not just Salvatore's history, but the philosophy of compassion and opportunity that had allowed her own transformation. The day of the anniversary arrived with perfect weather, sunshine warming the expanded patio, where additional tables had been arranged to accommodate the special event. Emma had designed the celebration as both a thank you to regular customers and an open house for the broader community, with tasting stations offering samples of Salvatore's signature dishes and market products. Daniel had flown in for the occasion, looking tanned and relaxed after months in the Italian sunshine. He moved through the crowd with the easy charm that had made him a beloved figure in the neighborhood for decades, introducing Emma to long-time customers she hadn't yet met and sharing stories from Salvatore's early days. As the afternoon progressed, Emma found a quiet moment to observe the scene from a distance, families enjoying the patio, children playing in a designated area supervised by Rosa, staff members confidently managing their stations with minimal guidance from her. Salvatore's had become exactly what she had envisioned. Not just a restaurant, but a gathering place, a community anchor, a source of nourishment that extended beyond food. Daniel joined her, following her gaze across the thriving scene they had created together. "Proud of what you've built?" he asked softly. Emma nodded. "I am, though I never could have done it without you taking that initial chance on me." "That's how life works," Daniel replied. "Someone takes a chance on us and then we take a chance on someone else." The circle continues. His words resonated deeply with Emma, who had recently implemented a hiring program specifically for parents returning to the workforce after extended absences. 3 of her newest employees were single mothers who reminded her powerfully of herself 2 years earlier, capable women whose circumstances had temporarily derailed their careers. "I've been thinking about expanding," Emma admitted, sharing the idea she'd been considering for months. Not just growing Salvatore's, but perhaps opening a second location, something smaller, more casual, but with the same values. Daniel's eyes lit with interest. "Tell me more." "A cafe and bakery," Emma explained, "serving breakfast and lunch with a training program for people facing employment barriers, somewhere that provides both good food and genuine opportunities." "A perfect extension of what you've built here," Daniel nodded approvingly. "Have you found a location?" "I'm looking at a space a few blocks away, the old hardware store that closed last year." Emma had already arranged financing, leveraging Salvatore's strong performance to secure favorable terms. It would need significant renovation, but the bones are good. When will you decide? Emma smiled. I signed the lease yesterday. Renovation begins next month, with a target opening in the fall. Daniel laughed, delighted by her initiative. You don't waste time once. Your mind is made up. Another quality we share. As afternoon transitioned to evening, the celebration continued with a more formal dinner service for invited guests, staff and their families, loyal customers, local business owners who had supported Salvatore's over the years. Emma had arranged for a photographer to capture the event, wanting to document this milestone for the restaurant's archives and her own memories. After the meal, Emma stood to address the gathered community. The nervousness she had once felt in public speaking had long since faded, replaced by the quiet confidence of someone who had earned her place at the head of the table. When I think about Salvatore's, she began, I'm reminded of something my mother taught me as a child. She always set an extra place at our table, even when times were tight. You never know who might need a seat, she would say. Emma glanced at her mother, who nodded encouragingly from her table near the front. 2 years ago, I was the one who needed that seat. I came to Salvatore's cold and hungry, with a baby in my arms and empty pockets. She paused, acknowledging the vulnerability in sharing this story publicly. I couldn't pay for my meal that night. I left a note of apology and fled, certain I'd never return. Murmurs rippled through the audience, as regular customers who hadn't known this history expressed surprise. But Daniel Salvatore saw something in that note beyond an unpaid bill. He saw a person in need of not just food, but opportunity. He set a place at his table for me and my daughter, literally and figuratively changing our lives forever. Emma gestured to Daniel, inviting him to stand beside her. This man taught me that true hospitality isn't just about serving meals, it's about nourishing potential. It's about recognizing that everyone deserves a chance to contribute, to grow, to build a meaningful life. She turned to address Daniel directly. You gave me that chance when I needed it most. In taking over Salvatore's, I haven't just acquired a business. I've inherited a legacy of compassion and opportunity that I intend to extend to others for many years to come. The room erupted in applause as Emma embraced Daniel, both of them blinking back tears. When the noise subsided, she raised her glass in a toast. To Salvatore's past, present and future, may we always have an extra place at our table for someone who needs it. Later that night, after the guests had departed and the staff had completed clean-up, Emma found herself alone in the restaurant once more. She moved through the quiet space, adjusting a chair here, straightening a picture there. Small touches that reflected her attention to detail and care for the environment she had created. At the hostess stand, she noticed a small velvet box. That hadn't been there earlier. Curious, she opened it to find a silver bracelet, identical to the one Daniel had gifted Lily when they first began working together. This one, however, was adult-sized, with a note in Daniel's distinctive handwriting. For Emma, who turned a table into a legacy. May you always find your place in the world you've created. With pride and affection, Daniel Emma slipped the bracelet onto her wrist, touched by the symbolism. Like the restaurant itself, she had transformed over these years, from a woman seeking warmth to a leader creating warmth for others, from someone needing help to someone with the capacity to help others. As she prepared to lock up for the night, Emma paused at the table where her journey had begun, the corner table where she had sat with baby Lily, where she had written a desperate note on a napkin, where her story had intersected with Daniel's in ways neither could have anticipated. She ran her fingers lightly over the surface, a silent acknowledgement of how far she had come. Then she turned toward the door and the future that awaited beyond it, a future she had built through perseverance, courage, and the willingness to accept help when it was offered. Outside, the spring night was mild, stars visible despite the city lights. Emma took a deep breath, savoring the moment of stillness before returning to her apartment where her mother would be watching Lily. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, new chances to extend to others the compassion. That had been shown to her. The second location would require attention and resources. The original Salvatores would continue to evolve under her guidance. Lily would continue growing, needing different kinds of support as she developed. But tonight, standing outside the restaurant that had changed everything, Emma allowed herself to simply feel gratitude. For Daniel's initial kindness, for her own resilience, for the community that had embraced her, for the chance to create something meaningful that would outlast her own story. The silver bracelet caught the moonlight as Emma checked the door, one final time. Then she turned and walked toward home, toward Lily, toward the next chapter of a life transformed by a single moment of compassion at a restaurant table set for someone in need.